From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Fox 8 studios in New Orleans, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I am your host, Sean Fazende, riding shotgun as he does each and every podcast. Is Andre Johnson.
Junior.
Do not forget the Junior. It's very important to remember the JR at the end of the name. Before we get into today's content, be sure to like, to share, to rate, to review. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, get the bell notification for when we drop that fire content. Also, once again, hello to the Gulf Coast Sports Entertainment Network. Glad you have found us here. All right, Andre, it is Friday in the city of New Orleans. Another big weekend coming up. Maybe a little quieter than last weekend where there was a whole lot going on. We have turned the calendar into May, Justin Timberlake voice. And here we are. But it just goes to show you just how fast everything is moving right along. While there is some time before the Saints get rolling with the season and preseason and training camp, it ain't that far away. It's still getting here closer and closer as the weeks and months go by. And so we're going to get into a little bit of one section of the Saints as we get closer and closer with a one position group. Before we do that, how you feeling on this Friday?
Feeling good. You know, we got a baby shower to go to this weekend, so that's the thing to do. Other than that, I will be at the house chilling. And like you said, I mean, it's kind of the calm before the storm right now, because before you know it, it's going to be rookie camp and then OTAs and mini camp and then training camp back in Metairie, where we'll be out there pretty much every day. So, yeah, this is the calm before the crazy period of the NFL offseason.
You said baby shower?
Yeah.
Not yours.
Yeah, not mine.
Not yours. Okay.
This is not a sudden announcement. Sorry, guys.
So we were going to have to start the congratulations here. All right. Soon it'll come.
Yeah, one day.
All right. So here we are on this Friday. Like I said, trying to, I guess, recover a little bit from a really busy week. But, you know, a lot of stuff is happening, and a lot of stuff is happening that are going to have a huge impact on the Saints in 2025 season. We talked about Derek Carr. We talked about the draft. But today I want to get into, frankly, with the big picture is, okay, we have Derek Carr here. We have the rest of the quarterbacks here. But what we haven't really discussed is what comes next in that quarterback room should Derek Carr not be available. And that's why I wanted to go with the big picture.
Yeah, you know, you mentioned a lot of things have been happening, but one thing that hasn't happened yet is that the Saints haven't gotten a veteran quarterback into that quarterback room. I mean, assuming Derek Carr is not there week one, and I know you said you're 90% sure that he's played his last down in New Orleans. I was 99% sure that he was done in New Orleans. So if both of those things come to pass and Derek Carr is indeed done in New Orleans, you're looking at a quarterback room right now of rookie Tyler Shuck, second-year, fifth-round draft pick Spencer Rattler, and third-year, fourth-round draft pick Jake Haener. And that's a tough way to go into the season. So, Sean, before we get into who's going to be QB1 and all of that, before we even think about that, do they need to add to this quarterback room at all?
The short answer is yes. If we are to believe that it's unlikely Derek Carr plays this season, then we obviously have to talk about the Saints quarterback room. It's important to point out, as we get farther and farther away from the initial leak of the injury to now the whatever that was last weekend, it is still important to point out that neither Derek Carr nor the Saints have completely shut the door on the potential of Derek Carr playing in 2025. However unlikely we may view it, the only communication we've had with the organization and the only communication that Derek Carr has had about his situation, at no point did they ever say, either side ever say, we're done and moving on. Mickey Loomis left the door open for Carr's return. So he said if he's healthy, he's the starter. So we will too, because we have to. We cannot just say it's done. But we both feel it likely is. Here's the other thing. He's under contract. And if he is indeed injured, no one can really do anything about it. You just got to kind of wait it out and see what the actual prognosis is. And that's where we're at. And that is the frustrating part for me, Andre. And I'm sure it's frustrating for you, and I know it's frustrating for the organization because
and fans.
You want some kind of clarity, and you want some kind of all right, well, now that this gray area that they seem to be in has just seemed to last a really long time. Again, since news broke on April 11th, what is it now?
It is
May 1st.
2nd.
May 2nd. You're right. May 2nd. And it happened before May 11th, we're assuming.
Yeah.
That's a long time to still
About
not
a
know. That's almost a month's worth of time. So I'm with all of y'all with the idea of, okay, what's taking so if that's where the frustration stems from, then obviously I'm right there with you. And look, I think given the way the Saints, how abrupt the Saints have been with every Derek Carr question, I think it frustrates them too because this is a franchise quarterback they spent a lot of money on and restructured the contract and did a lot of things with the idea that he was coming back. So we'll see. But if we're going to go with what we feel like is likely, then let's go down that road. If the shoulder does not heal and he takes the surgery route and he ends up on IR, which, by the way, is something we're all forgetting because if he has the surgery and ends up on IR, he ain't playing anywhere. And who knows how many more years he's got left in the NFL. Just something FYI. Do the Saints really roll into the season with Spencer Rattler, Tyler Shuck, and Jake Haener, 3 guys with 7 starts between them, and more importantly, 0 wins? Not just 0 wins, frankly, not playing well enough in any of those 7 starts to deserve a victory. They just did not play well enough, long enough, consistent enough, long enough, get enough breaks to win that game, regardless of some spurts of good play, mainly from Spencer Rattler. So I say if Carr is out, they have to get a veteran. Not they should. Let me repeat that. They have to get a veteran. They have to. They must. They have to have some kind of true experience in that room on a daily basis because those 3 guys, Shuck, Rattler, and Haener, like I said, there's 7 career starts. That's just not just one player starting with not a lot of experience. That's an entire room of no experience. So if that were to happen, and I'm not going to get to the players just yet. I'm going to get your take on this first. I think you could see those 3, and if they added a veteran, it wouldn't be those 3. I think one of those 3 would be gone after that. So we'll get into that in a second. But first, let me hear your thoughts on if they should invest in one.
I definitely believe they should invest in a veteran quarterback, but let me add that I don't think that veteran, no matter who they are, should start.
No,
I'm not
right.
saying they should get a starting caliber veteran. They should go out there in a depleted free agency and try to find somebody to play week 1. I need a veteran in this room for 4 reasons. Number 1, to bring experience. And as we get into the names, you'll notice that a lot of the guys that we'll probably name have playoff experience. They've played in big games, some of them in the biggest game, So I like that experience to help these 3 young players learn the ropes in the NFL. Speaking of which, I want a veteran to help teach these guys how to be a pro. These are the things that kind of go underrated when you think about rookies, coming in. They were, in college a few months ago. Now they're coming in and they have to learn how to be a pro, and that goes beyond the field. That goes into the classroom, the media room, your routines. Speaking of routines, another reason, crafting a routine. When you listen to players talk, their pregame, pre-practice, going home, they're religious about their routines. Finding one of them early in your career is a key to being a successful pro. A veteran understands that, and obviously guiding them through the pitfalls, both on and off the field, because there can be many of those when you're a professional athlete. So, I think a veteran in this room would definitely help Spencer Rattler. It would help Tyler Shuck. If Jake Haener sticks around, it would help Jake Haener. So we can get into some of those names, but no matter who it is, well, there's one guy who I absolutely don't want, so minus that guy, no matter who it is, I think having a vet in this room helps everybody.
Yeah, I think it's an important distinction. This is not someone to come in and start and be, I'll pencil him in. This would be a situation where if Derek Carr is not there, you have a stable veteran presence in the quarterback room. I call it the Luke McCown effect. When Luke McCown, most Saints fans probably remember him, but he didn't do he started one game. They almost beat the Panthers. It was an ugly season. It was the first.
I was there actually in Carolina.
It was the very first game Drew Brees ever missed due to an injury. But I mean, every year he was on the roster, we would talk. Just in preseason, in training camp, you get through everyone on the roster. So eventually, you're coming around to a couple of these guys, and you're asking some of the premier players and coaches about them. how much they would all rave about Luke McCown's presence in the room, presence in the meetings. I remember talk about young quarterbacks. When Garrett Grayson got here, he said he was lost, and he would have been lost had it not been for Luke McCown. So that's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about a veteran that's going to come in and take the job, or someone that they're going to ID as a starter and come on in to do just that. So that's where we're trying to make that important distinction.
Look what Andy Dalton did for Bryce Young last season.
Exactly.
Helped take his game to the next level.
And here's the other thing. I'm glad you brought up Andy Dalton, because he's the last backup quarterback to win a game for the Saints. And technically he became the starter, because I think he and James were pretty neck and neck in terms of their final score. If you graded them all out, strengths and weaknesses came to the same spot. They didn't exactly go to the same path to that score, but it was relatively close to the same spot. And I think, at that time it was fine to roll with him. But they have not won a game with a backup quarterback since. And now there's a chance you won't have your starter, which means you're starting a young guy. And because you've had to invest in the backup quarterback position, or because you've had to rely on the backup quarterback position for quite some time, it'd be nice to have a guy that can come in and just do enough to win 13-10, or just do enough to win 21-17, or whatever, because they haven't even had that in a really, really long time.
Yeah, and you got to think for the rookie. Let's say it is Tyler Shuck that wins the job. Let's say it is Spencer Rattler. Mm-hmm. They have a very short time to figure it out if you're the New Orleans Saints organization, because we'll way deeper into the offseason. We'll get into what we expect the Saints records to be. Mm-hmm. Spoiler alert, I don't expect their record to be very good next year. If the Saints are in a position where they potentially have a top 5 pick, whoever starts this year, they might be gone. You may not get another chance. So if you're Shuck, if you're Rattler, if you're Hainer, let's say you throw him into the battle, you have to figure this thing out quick, and a veteran can help you fast track that, because if you're bad your first year, there may not be a second year. You think of just a quick example. I believe it was Will Grier was drafted by the Panthers, second or third round. I think it was a year or two before Bryce Young. Will Grier couldn't catch on. They draft Bryce Young, number 1 overall, to take his spot. We've seen Josh Rosen drafted in the first round. He didn't impress year 1. They replaced him with Kyler Murray. Even all the way back to Cam Newton. I believe they had just drafted Jimmy Clausen. And Cam Newton gets there and immediately takes that spot. So if you don't produce in year 1, especially as a round 2 quarterback as Tyler Shuck, a round 5 quarterback in Spencer Rattler, there's not going to be a year 2.
There's no guarantee, right? I try to keep telling people this, they drafted somebody they think they could start in the second round, not necessarily a franchise cornerstone. It's just something he could potentially get into that. He could just as easily not get into that. So we'll see. But I think helping either whoever starts, Rattler, Hainer, or who we both believe will likely be Shuck, they're going to need some veteran in the room. That's not a coach. So let's go through some of the names. I got a couple right here.
Let me hear them. What we got?
Teddy B.
Okay.
Teddy Bridgewater, Carson Wentz, and Tyler Huntley. Those would be the 3 that are currently available right now that I would strongly consider. I know Carson Wentz has somewhat fallen off, and that fall off needs to be studied, because at one point we were talking about Carson Wentz being the next guy in the NFL. He was an
MVP candidate at one point.
Just look at the guy in the same class as him. Jared Goff is still playing really good football. They were 1-2 that year. But he's been through a lot. He's played in a lot of games, and he would hopefully have in his head that's where he's at in his career. And at that type of experience, you can't fake that. I think that would be a name you could look at. Tyler Huntley was Lamar Jackson's backup forever.
Yeah.
Was it Miami last year? Is that right?
Miami. He started.
So he's available right now. So that's certainly a name. Still relatively young. Which could be a little bit of a dicey situation if you have a young backup who maybe has starting ambitions. But the guy I would probably roll would be Teddy B. Teddy Bridgewater, because Teddy Bridgewater is very comfortable in his own skin. He's very comfortable where he's at, how his career has gone. He retired the year before last, came back. Is that right?
Yeah, he came back at the tail end of last season.
Played a little bit. Understands the city of New Orleans, really connected with the city of New Orleans quite quickly. And I think that could certainly help for any newcomer, because any newcomer to the city doesn't always vibe with the fan base, as we're witnessing almost as we speak when it comes to Derek Carr and the fan base. So I think those are the names that could be available right now. But I think this is an important distinction, Andre, because I believe the Saints need to add a veteran, and they will add a veteran, but I don't think they have to do it like today. I really don't. And the reason why I say that is this. There will likely be some quarterbacks that become available. Now the draft has happened, quarterback boards are reshuffled, certain things will happen in OTAs. Now, I don't know how close you want to get to training camp without having your guy, but I don't think it's a guarantee. I don't think you just have to do it right now. And really, I would look no farther than the Cleveland Browns room right now. The Cleveland Browns quarterback room. They ain't all going to be there by the time. Heck, with that many guys, I probably would get rid of one fairly quickly. But they drafted Dylan Gabriel. They drafted your guy, Shedeur Sanders. While I also traded for Kenny Pickett, and they have Joe Flacco on the roster. If Pickett or Flacco both become available, I consider, or either one of those become available, I would consider either one for this role, particular Flacco. Because, again, he's at a spot in his career. He knows he's at the end, but he's been productive relatively soon, relatively close, within, a relatively short amount of time, recently, I should say. And I think that would be the perfect sort of guy, that type for the role we're talking about. Pickett is an interesting one because he's got history with Kellen Moore, but Pickett still wants to be a starter someday. He's a former first-round pick, and I don't think the book is completely written on him. Eagles drafted Kyle McCord. They have Hurts. They have Dorian Thompson-Robinson. They also have Tanner Mackey, who I don't know if he started a lot of games. Did he play? He played a little bit last year. Did he start a game last year?
He started.
Okay, so that wouldn't really qualify here. And then there's also the who could potentially be available, the trade candidates. Would you be willing to sacrifice a sixth-round pick for a veteran? I would.
Yeah.
I look at the guy that kind of outdueled Spencer with the Raiders last year. They got Geno now. Is that worth maybe making a call about? Does he stay on the roster? Aiden O'Connell. And the guy that doesn't make any sense to me, he's got a clear-cut history with Kellen Moore, but where he signed,
Cooper Rush,
makes no sense. Like, you got to have some semblance of what your starter can do with your backup, or what your backup do in terms of if he comes in. You can't do a totally different offense.
In Baltimore, by the way, with Lamar Jackson.
Cooper Rush is backing up Lamar Jackson. Could you find two more polar opposite quarterbacks in the same room? And they're one snap away from going complete 180 on their offense. That's another name I would look at, Cooper Rush. So there's no clear-cut answer right now, but I do, I don't think there is an obvious one out there. But I do think this is something the staff has to look at, because I think they would be leaving themselves vulnerable, which could hurt development from any one of these three young guys if they don't have some sort of veteran in the room.
I've got 7 names here.
Okay.
3 of them are free agents. 3 of them are on other teams that I think would be good candidates to come over and be that veteran in the room. Mm-hmm. The 7th is the guy that I don't want near this team whatsoever. We'll start with him just to address the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers.
Okay, it's not happening.
Aaron Rodgers, we know he's a free agent. We know he's looking for a team. Aaron Rodgers is more of a headache than he is an additive to the room. Aaron Rodgers is not coming to this team to mentor 3 young guys. He's coming trying to extend his playing career. Keep Aaron Rodgers far away from New Orleans, now that that's out the way. Same 3 free agents you have in the same order. Teddy Bridgewater, Carson Wentz, Tyler Huntley. Teddy Bridgewater, before he got back into the NFL last season, he was coaching high school football, won a state championship in high school football in Miami. So Teddy Bridgewater is a guy that has worked with younger players. Teddy Bridgewater is a guy that knows that he is not, anybody who signs Teddy Bridgewater is not signing him to be the starter and face of their franchise. They're signing him as almost an assistant coach on the staff that can come in and play if needed. Carson Wentz, he's a guy who's been near the top of this league. I mean, he's played at an MVP level. He was injured for the actual Super Bowl, but he does have a Super Bowl ring, that he won with Philadelphia. So Carson Wentz, a guy who we've seen play low-level football, high-level football. He's been a starter. He's been a backup. I think he would be a good additive to the room. Tyler Huntley, former Pro Bowler, like you said. He's backed up Lamar Jackson. He backed up Tua Tagovailoa. He's been coached by John Harbaugh, coached by Mike McDaniel in Miami. So he's had some really good coaches throughout the league. So I like those 3 as free agents. Trade-wise, 3 guys who I wrote down. Again, none of which that I would ever want to see start a game, but as a veteran presence in the room, they could help. Number 1, Marcus Mariota. in Washington.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that could
I'm
work.
sure he helped Jaden Daniels a lot last year as Jaden was
Didn't
trying
think
to
of him. Yeah.
learn the ropes as a rookie. And I know it's not going to be that expensive to get a Marcus Mariota out of Washington. I like Marcus Mariota, who's got a little bit of mobility, similar to Rattler, similar to Tyler Shuck when he gets his legs moving, you know. So I think a Mariota who's been through a lot of football, who's seen a lot of systems, he could help. Jacoby Brissett in Arizona.
Yeah.
He played with Tom Brady. He played under Bill Belichick. He's seen some of the best and the best and worked with some of the best and the best. Having his experience in the room, been in a lot of big playoff game atmospheres. I think that could be an additive. And the last one, Drew Lock. We've seen Drew Lock in Denver. We've seen him in Seattle. He hasn't been able to stick as a starter.
With the Giants last year against the Saints.
With the Giants too, exactly. So we've seen him in a lot of spots. And Drew Lock, I mean, he hasn't been able to stick as a starter, but as a backup and as a veteran, because he's starting to get up there in age, I think he could help a room. So you've got a lot of options here, you know.
Now, just to be clear, if it's a trade, nothing higher than a 6th round pick.
Yeah, I'm
right?
not giving anything more than a 6th round pick because again, I'm not picking this guy with the hopes that he would start any games. But I will ask you this: when it comes to veteran quarterbacks, do you think that maybe the Saints could opt not to get a veteran quarterback because they look at it this way? We got 3 veteran quarterbacks in the building: Scott Tolzien, Kellen Moore, Doug Nussmeier. Scott Tolzien and Kellen Moore, it has not been that long since they were playing in the league.
Yeah, I think you can't rule that out. And they may say, like, you know, he's inexperienced, but he does have 6 starts in Spencer Rattler. I don't think you can rule that out. I don't think that's the best plan of attack. When you have the head coach as your play caller, though, you almost have a bonus coach.
Right.
So you have an OC in Doug Nussmeier and a quarterback's coach in Scott Tolzien. So they do have a lot of quarterback energy in that building. Let's put it that way. So I certainly think that would be possible. And I don't know that I would shred them for it, but I just think it's probably in everyone's best interest to have someone you can count on in the room, intangible, and someone, if you got to throw them in for 2 games, they know what they're doing. They don't look like a deer in the headlights. Yeah. So I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that they sign a guy. And I do think there is a part that looks at, Spencer Rattler is a young veteran, youngish veteran. No, he's not a young veteran. He's a second-year guy, but he's, 25, 26 years old? Yeah. And he's had some starts. So worst comes to worst, we can turn to him. And plus they got, a lot of quarterbacks, former quarterbacks on the coaching staff. Or see what's available, see what could potentially be added. That's the other thing, too, is what's available. What can you realistically get? Those names you named were great. The names I said were fine, too, but you got to execute a trade like that.
Right.
So it's harder to pull off. So I think in this case, all options would be on the table.
Speaking of players who are available, before we get out of here, we got a few minutes left. The Saints did sign 11 undrafted free agents. We're not going to go through them one by one, but was there anybody who stuck out from that class? I know last year the one that stuck out for us was Dallin Holker.
He made the team. And the punter, Matthew Hayball, he made the team. There were 3. First off, smaller pool this year than previous years because they had such a bigger draft class. Mm-hmm. And I think just as a rule, the Saints probably early in the Peyton era, I think they really leaned into that undrafted free agent reputation, which is good. But I also think it impacted their draft philosophy a lot, which I think caught up to them by the end because they struck a couple hits with some undrafted guys, Pierre Thomas, Josh Hill, Lance Moore, that I think it almost made the trade-up philosophy they have easier to take. But I think it almost made them feel a little like day 3 or late draft picks weren't quite as necessary because they can just fill in the holes with undrafted free agents. I think that's caught up to them a little bit. So, I'm glad they have a bigger class, but I still think you can't discount their undrafted history here. So there were 3 names. Running back Marcus Yarns, because running backs have always had an opportunity to make the team as an undrafted free agent. 6.3 yards per carry in Delaware, small school, 4.45 40. This is what stood out, though. 5 receiving touchdowns last year, 3 receiving touchdowns the year before, so he can catch the ball out of the backfield.
That's big.
James Burnett, punter, 6'6", 236, Aussie. Happened last year with Hayball. It could happen again. And finally, we got, a minute and a half here. Cornerback Dallas Beanham, from South Dakota State. You'd say, why would you want a South Dakota State guy? Well, he's 6'1", so he's got length. And I don't care what level of football, you cannot teach ball skills. He's got 12 career interceptions in college. And plus, they have a huge need at cornerback. But you can add a 5th or a 6th corner. So, Beanham, Burnip, and Yarns are my 3 guys.
I have one of those guys. I have James Burnip because there's something about the Saints. They just love Australian punters.
They sure do.
They love their Australian special teamers. James Burnip is the most recent one. And another one for me was Tyreen Powell, the linebacker.
Linebacker, yeah.
Huge, 6'5", 240 pounds. Now, the detriment to his game is he's a bit on the slow side. He is a slower player, but he's so strong. He's so physical. He's a really good tackler. Once he gets his arms on you, he can bring you down. He's somebody who I was actually surprised wasn't drafted, in the 6th or 7th round later in the draft. And maybe if he had ran a faster 40, that would have been the case because his speed is really the biggest downside to Tyreen. But he played at a pretty high level in college despite being a slower player. So I think that Tyreen Powell.
What's his measurements again?
He ran a 4.92, but he's 6'5", 240 pounds. He might need to get on that line.
I think he's an edge player. I think he's probably edge outside linebacker than straight off ball linebacker.
That's what I think he needs to explore because you've got versatility options with somebody
you ain't
size.
playing linebacker at 4'9".
Yeah.
Like real linebacker. Outside edge linebacker, pass rush you can.
And with this physical style of play, I think he could rush the quarterback.
I wonder how many. That would certainly be interesting. You got to pay attention to him as they do with all teams. Just wonder how many spots there are available. You don't want to get so young because you already got 9 rookies that I think can make the team. So how many more rookies do you need on the roster? So maybe a year where not as many undrafted guys make the roster, and that may not be the worst thing in the world because, as I said, I think it's kind of impacted their draft strategy.
Right.
And I think they've kind of wore that out a little bit. So we'll see. All right, we gotta get out of here. All right, Andre Johnson Jr., Sean Fazende. Catch you guys next time on Overtime.